Welcome to the second plenary session, thematic plenary session, Building a Learning World. Now, of course, we're on the third day of the WISE conference, and so we're moving to some sort of conclusions, and that's what the opening element of today is going to be all about. But first, let's just recap a little where we are and where we're going. Let's take a look at this film, please.
The questions that arise for those who are thinking about how educational systems should be designed are pretty much the same ones that have arisen for hundreds of years.
It's very important that this debate is not dominated by the focus on short-term profit, which so often it is, because people are looking at these kids as mere instruments of national economic gain.
How can we create a true participation in which the ideas and decisions come from the young people themselves? Adults should listen to them because young people have huge potential.
How do we have human beings who aren't just smart or skilled in any way, shape, or form, but also want to do the right thing, want to be moral, want to be ethical, and not just want to be, but do it.
We have education as one of the five targets for Europe 2020. And we want to encourage young people, first of all, to get the skills that the market needs. And in order to do that, we must bring closer the universities or the higher education institutes with the businesses.
One of the key things we would like to contribute with in the world of education is allowing more children to express themselves in their unique way. Because some children are comfortable expressing themselves in writing, some through telling stories. But there is also a number of children who are not comfortable with that, but who like to use their hands to express their own ideas.
20 years ago, 30 years ago, people thought the brain was quite fixed, that it wasn't very responsive to its local environment. What neuroscientists have discovered is that it's intensely responsive to its local environment, so that responsiveness it gives hope for education.
When you talk about education, if you just talk about access without the quality of education, you are wasting your time. If you talk about access, quality, and you don't address finance, it is not sustainable. And don't forget that in the field you have many partners.
Education is really the most important right for the 21st century, probably.
Historically, students have often been at the cutting edge of significant social change.
And we need to shake things up through teaching students how to argue, how to listen to each other respectfully, how to have a difference of opinion that's not just a shouting match, how to analyze an issue, and in short, how to have a genuinely deliberative public culture.
Well, there you have it, access, quality, finance. It's a big challenge. How do we build a learning world? Could I invite our panel up, please, to join me on the stage? Well, let me introduce to you from the far end, Professor Binqi Zhang, here on a momentous day for China. This is the moment we've discovered the new Chinese leadership, so we're delighted to have a leader of Chinese education here. Education is absolutely his speciality, and he's done a great deal of research, 20 books, and I think it's going to be exciting to listen to what he has to say. We're then joined by Roberto Cunheiro. He's a former education minister in Portugal, and he served at an incredibly difficult time when the Portuguese colonies there were a great number of people flooding back to Portugal. They absorbed 1 million people, had to devise educational structures for them. But he's now running he's now running the organization called CEP, which is the Research Center on Peoples and Cultures at the Portuguese Catholic University. And then we have Gabi Zedlmeier, and she is the Vice President for Sustainability and Social Innovation at Hewlett-Packard, and she was voted one of the 150 women most likely to shake the world, or the 150 women already shaking the world. We'll see whether she shakes our world. And finally, honored last night with a WISE Award for the Bharti School, we have Rakesh Bharti Mittal, who is the Managing Director of the Bharti Group, which is one of India's leading telecoms, agribusiness. I mean, it's in everything. It's in retail, it's in real estate, and it's here. So now, let's start first with Gabi and ask you, what would a learning world look like to you if it were perfectly built? Would it be virtual, real? What would it look like?
Well, it would certainly look very different from what we're seeing out today. It looks more like agricultural, industrial age, classroom-centric, textbook-centric. Yet if you take a look at how children learn and how they communicate and how they do teamwork and collaborate, they already use technology, and it's absolutely not embedded in the way that we teach. So when we look at different industries and how they have fundamentally transformed, take a look at finance, entertainment, media, communications. Information technology has fundamentally transformed the way we do all of that. Yet you take a look at education, and it just hasn't found its way into really making the education more immersive, more collaborative, and providing more access. We heard that before. So what we're working on with leading universities in the world is looking at not only providing online access to people and to students, but how to make this online studying experimental and turn it into an experience. And just one example, we've come up with a software that's called eLab. And right now, as we speak, so this is not 10 years from now, this is now, we have a lot of children sitting in African countries, in Kenya, for example, and all they have is internet access, and they have a PC, and they can do real-time experiments. So they do physics experiments and chemistry experiments, and the labs are thousands of miles away. But they sit at the PC, they add a little bit of temperature and a little bit of water, or you name it, and the experiment is happening. It's not a simulation, it's very, very different. So talking about sustainability, talking about utilization of what exists already and sharing resources, that's a great way of making online not just something you read on a screen, but something that you can really absolutely experience.
Well, Rajesh, that feels a very long way away from the school that we learned about last night, which is a very holistic, family-based idea for people, many of whom have never had any contact with education. Can you identify with the world that Gabi is describing?
Well, fortunately, I can, being amongst the fortunate one who have been able to walk through this journey and through this lane. But to my mind, when we talk about our project, we talk about the marginalized children who are not fortunate enough to have access to technology, to have access to many other issues which the urban children in the urban towns and urban areas get. So to me, while virtual schools has been talked about for a very long time, it cannot in any which way substitute or replace the physical schools. Because also I believe that it is the interaction, it is the touch and feel. When you interact, talk to each other, is a great learning experience in itself. So when we talk about our village schools, and I go back to the rural India, the electricity is not available. So how do you even talk about providing a digital content? I mean, we sometimes struggle that as and when the power comes in, we bring the children into a computer class and try to maximize their knowledge. Having said that, we have been innovating in a way that our teachers are learners for life. So we are training them on the job, who in turn are trying to make those children who they teach learners for life. But more importantly, I think the teachers are acting more as mentors, as facilitators who are teaching these children not only education, but also values. They are connecting them to communities through innovative projects. We, as a matter of fact, today, my 38,000 children are change agents in the communities they live in, because that's what they see. That's the world they have seen so far. So in a way, I do understand what Gabby is saying, but real world out there, for especially countries like India and rural India, is absolutely a different landscape and perspective.
Rakesh, thank you. And I want now, I'll come back to you, Gabby, because I can see you bursting to come in, but I want to go to the other end of the equation, to higher education. Binky Zhang, how do you see things? Do you probably chime a little closer to what Gabby's been saying?
我用中文来回答这个问题，这样可以让我的这个表达更加清晰一点和准确一点。应该这样讲，这个高等教育的发展，它除了我们的这种正常的学校教育之外
，besides the normal education, we need web learning world. I think it's a big theme building a learning world for Chinese higher education. The size is 30 million. It's the first when you're talking about the numbers of the students, but it's not covered all the students. Today is only 26% of the youth can go to universities. So now it's very important to build a kind of a network besides the universities. China announced a project Open University. It's the biggest open university. It's 3.6 million students is when we use the distance learning, and it's very good for the remote learning, for the remote areas. And again, for the web learning, e-learning, you are not limited geographically and by the times. And then another role, very important role, is that for the higher education. And another thing is to increase the quality. Quality is a very important issue. How? The e-learning is also a very good tool. We relied on the good quality universities and then to share the resources openly with the other universities. Because you don't have that many high quality universities, we only can rely on collaboration and openness to share the resources. And today we have a plan, and it aims to encourage the universities to open their courses to share with the other universities and to share these resources with the society. And I think it's very good to democratize the education, but it's also very important to increase the quality.
Very interesting, because, of course, it replicates and mirrors quite a lot of what's going on in the United States, for example, where MIT is opening its courses to the general populace. But Roberto, what's your vision of this learning world that we're building?
Well, I think I'm somewhere in between. Gabi was speaking of this high-tech world. Mita was speaking about high-touch world. I think education is much about high-touch, a bit of high-tech. Chung was speaking about higher education. There's basic education. I think we speak about very many extremes, okay? What I believe is that we might have a world in the future. I foresee a future where you might have learning materials, knowledge objects everywhere, every time. Kind of utility. Press a button, you get electricity. To open a tab, you get learning materials. It's not enough, because people are not learning objects. People are learning subjects. You need a lot of high touch. You need to have people to be mentored. You have teachers, good teachers who are empowered, who are trained to do that. So a new job to facilitate the path of the student to learning. You've got to have some interaction between children. Schools are social institutions. You have to play, you have to get together with others and learn. I think it would be monstrous to imagine a world where each child will be individually before a screen. It's monstrous. I think you have to have children playing together. I can see a lot in higher education coming together. We do a lot of e-learning and blended learning as well in our country. We try to group people. We try to mix get them through semi-learning and get them in small groups in classrooms, some teaching once a week on Saturdays. So it's a blended thing. I think we're moving towards a mix, a blended thing, not only a one typical. The other thing we have to have competent learners. We imagine a lifelong learning world. We have competent learners who can self-regulate their learning. We can't have a teacher behind each citizen. Competent learners who learn at school, learning to learn, the seduction learning, the drive to learn, and learn the basic competencies of self-regulation, metacognition, motivation, all that. Okay.
Well, can I make one clarification, Binky? The distance learning that you are pioneering in China, does anybody ever see anybody? Or are they always at a computer terminal?
For the education, e-learning is only, we don't only rely on e-learning, it's one part of our project. And also we have face-to-face teaching complementary. For example, the state open university and also the universities set up the open courses, but they also set up physical sites, and then there is a face-to-face teaching. And the people can go to different sites in different cities. So you can establish smaller size classrooms. So it is kind of combination of open university and smaller classrooms, but it's also limited. You do not have a feeling of a campus. This is a problem, so we need to study that further. And then how to control quality, because when in a normal classroom, the teachers can observe, and then you can do a better discussion. But now, what we can do is put the quality control on the top of these courses, and then we can have an internal control.
Right. So we'll come to how this is financed and indeed quality control in a moment. Let's just finish this point. Everybody is in fact talking about the need for face-to-face, but in different degrees. People are talking about the extent to which you can depend on e-learning and the rest of it. Gabby.
Yeah, I don't want to have this misunderstood. I think technology is an enabler. It's not the solution in and by itself. The children in Africa I was talking about are sitting in a school and they get access to these labs. So the question on the one hand is access, and we're working on that as well. In India, for example, we have the lab in the box where children can come and work on thin clients in very rural areas to experience technology. But it's really how to make online, like I said earlier, something that is more than just reading on a screen. And our labs in India, for example, have just developed a software that's called video books. And so when children learn, their textbooks get digitized, and as they learn and go through the chapters, the software will look for video materials that explain exactly the content in the book. So it's about the quality of the learning. It's much easier for these children. And with the labs, we're also working on creating more fingerprint-type education based on the fingerprints of the children, so that we teach children and we test children according to their abilities. And some of the first beta results that we have render, for example, tests that will always serve up new questions based on the previous answers that kids have given. So a lot of this is happening as we speak. My point is just that I think if I take a look at how basic technology, for example, in Kenya, has transformed the finance system with M-Pesa, it's not just a software, it's how people made it work and integrated it into the system. That's what this is about. And my last point is that we know that we're short of school places, and we know that in order to even facilitate the need for university places, we would have to build 4 universities each week, and each of them would have to hold 30,000 students over the next 15 years. It's not going to happen. So we might as well take a look at how we can make online the best it can be and how we can bring these systems together. It's not one or the other.
Right. Rakesh, you know about money. You know about entrepreneur life and manufacturing and the rest of it. how do we finance? I mean, how do you finance your very remote schools, and how do you see finance playing a role? Because, I mean, you don't get access without providing something which costs money.
So, John, let me answer the question you raised first. The resources are being brought in by the family and our employees who are part of the ACT program, which we call a caring touch. And the companies contribute to that, but majority of the money has come from the family to see that this is a sustainable initiative. Let me also add to what my other colleagues talked about. I mean, there's another India where technology is being used to disseminate knowledge. And for me, knowledge and information is paramount. I mean, it's a facilitator to entrepreneurs, in rural India, in cities. I mean, for example, on the mobile phones, we go and deliver agriculture content to the farmers. Earlier, where a farmer used to come to a town for a problem on a crop and wait for a couple of hours or days, today just click a picture, MMS, in 20 minutes they get the solution. There are experts sitting providing that. So if I say technology is not being used, it's extensively being used. It's only when we go into the other part of India where children are not fortunate enough, where initiatives like ours go and play a major role. Also, I can tell you, I mean, Indian School of Business, they started their first campus in Hyderabad and second is now come up at Mohali. There are classes which are being delivered from one place to the other on a video conference. We've set up the Bharati Institute of Public Policy and partnered with the Fletcher School at Tufts. And going forward, we are looking to come out with degree courses where you only have to come into the campus once a week for 4 months, and then go back into your work, and content is delivered on the internet and online. So there are mix and match, I would say, initiatives.
Well, that raises a really interesting point, and that then is quality control. How does the student know the value of what it is they're accessing? I mean, Binky's got this fantastic open university where there's going to be a myriad number of courses. How do they know from A and B and C and D, this vast choice, that what they're actually buying, in many cases, or at least accessing, is of value?
I would say it really depends on the faculty which you have. When we talk of universities and colleges, and when we talk of open universities in India also, we do have that. It is then based on where is the content coming from. And clearly, I think to my mind, that is the responsibility of the university to ensure that quality content is delivered to whoever is seeking that for, rather than the recipient, wanting to know which content is of quality or not.
But Roberto, does the state then have some kind of a role in regulating or establishing standards, or how do you see it?
I think there's some regulation standards that the state should establish. The state shouldn't intervene as the sole agency in evaluating these materials. Otherwise, you submit to graft or to things like this. These materials some of them are very, very profitable, okay? I imagine you should have some independent agency doing it. And basically, as we do it, I think it's basically end-user evaluation. You can't have all these experts in a room evaluating all these thousands of materials coming up, posting up. End-user evaluation, I think, is the best measure of this. This puts the demand side rather than supply side. You tend to look at ICT, at INT, but C is the fundamental letter. C is communication. For education, C is not information, not technology. Castell speaks of informational technology, where you download loads of material through the technology. That's not improving education industry. I imagine education as service, not industry. Service, you have to look at demand side, what demand wants, what demand needs, the learner and the teacher. Teacher is also a great user of these ICT materials. So you have to look at them, what they need, and you have to satisfy those needs. Those demand side, there's education service, not education to industry. Okay.
Well, Gabby, you're from the private sector. So let's say a private sector company comes up with a whole range of access opportunities and the rest of it. Should you be regulated in some form? I mean,
I think it's the same question as you can't regulate all the content on the internet. So I think this is just something that we need to shape together. And if we take a look, we've said it before, a lot of these universities are already offering content and they're offering certificates. They call it Harvard X or MITx, but these are certificates. Now what we're doing is we're taking a look at how long is it going to take until these certificates are going to be good enough for an accredited, basically, degree. Things are changing out there. Technology and the access to all of this information is changing. The role of the teacher and the professor is changing. And I think it's the ecosystem that needs to make this work. And you can't control each and every aspect of it because it's too wide out there. I just don't see it.
Binky, how does the average student in Shanghai determine whether what they're being offered is what they want and whether it's actually of any value?
应该这样讲。
I should say that today in China, the situation is like there's two ways for the children to go online. The government rolled out some rules and to determine how they go online, the children. And then there are some institutions, organizations, they play a role of a filter which content are not fit for the younger people, etc. But there is a issue of a controversial issue. But through these two means, we hope that can help the children to select the content and to avoid harmful content.
In terms, Gabby, of the general populace's access to the World Wide Web and the sort of understanding of the potential of the internet, we're talking literally a history of probably only 2 decades for the general public. I want now to put a challenge down to all four of you, and you first. Take us 20 years forward. Yeah. What is the learning world going to look like in 20 years' time, in reality?
So we can talk 20 years forward, but even if I tell you what's already out there, a lot of people would think it's 20 years forward, because what we're already doing is we're building out social marketplaces where people in different parts of the world can basically upload social applications, and then you can basically say these are entrepreneurial applications, which are so much needed today.
But you're talking about a minority of the world, a tiny minority of the world.
It's growing very fast. I think we're at an inflection point, and I really think that a lot of now a lot of the benefits, because we've proven them over the last 2 or 3 years, can be seen, and that usually does make a difference. And we are at a point where, with cloud and mobility and the connection between the two of them and the devices, the proliferation of devices out there, you have a different way to access information. And I know not everybody, but increasing numbers of students and people that, lifelong learning for that matter, have access to these devices. And the cloud enables us to work with these different IT application engineers, these different NGOs, different folks that are interested in creating social applications. And I think that's extremely forward-thinking, but it's already, to some steps, we're already there. An example, we have an entrepreneurship training program. We believe 21st century skills, it's all about entrepreneurship. And it shows everybody that was in the past able to go to our centers, and they are in 47 countries. We have over 300 centers. People would come and they would be taught how to use IT to do a marketing plan, accounting plan, their website, crowdsource for services, anything it takes for an entrepreneur. But you can't scale that very quickly to give access to everybody. So we have transferred the entire content online, make it available on the cloud for anybody in the world that wants to have access to this type of information. Now, that's just entrepreneurship applications. Other companies, other NGOs could come in and say, we'll join the marketplace. And that's what I see, 20 years forward.
Can Binky students access your cloud?
Yes.
Yeah. No controls. I mean, this raises a very interesting situation because, of course, you have a different system. You have a situation in which the state is still fundamentally in control of education. Isn't there a possibility that if you move into the world that Gabby is actually describing, there's all sorts of free thinking may start developing, and that could be a challenge to the people who organize the entire system?
We should say that in China, for higher education or basic education, there is a democratization and quality. You need to strike the balance. So we are putting forward the reforms is the more autonomy to the schools. So first way is to institutional system reform and to control the schools. Which schools are qualified is a certification run by the state. And the second way is to establish an internal control system within the systems and quality and meet the needs of the students. And the third way is under process is an evaluation by third parties. And for the learners are changing, their needs are changing. So maybe it's not very open yet, but the needs required more openness. So it's also a process. So I believe with the openness of the web and the openness of the country, and I think everything will improve. And I think MIT or Harvard, they have very high quality courses. They are open. In China, you can click and get the courses, and it's open world. It's very good. It's a resource sharing by the world. Thank you.
Roberto, so your vision, 20 years' time?
Well, I foresee a world that's ever more complex. And education is a complex business. Therefore, the response to complexity is self-organization, self-regulation. I foresee a role of state in quality assurance and standards. You have to have some regulation there, but basically it's self-organization. So I must say I foresee a world where there's semantic technology delivering learning materials everywhere, every place. I see a lot of educators as mentors, as scaffolders, as teachers to help these students find meaning in their ways through these materials.
What will your world have done to the rural communities that Rakesh is reaching in his much more...
I think it's great to have rural communities have access to all this without losing their basic qualities and basic values. I think we have to value a lot more tacit knowledge and traditional knowledge against codified and scientific knowledge. My grandmother used to say, look, I know all this cooking. I never wrote a book of recipes, but this cooking is great. I used to taste cooking is great. So this tacit knowledge is great. We have to value this, not only codified scientific knowledge. I think I dream of an education system where informal and non-formal learning is important, where you can certify and accredit informal, non-formal learning, where education can be more personalized, where teaching methods and teaching models can better fund evidence-based brain research. Okay, brain research is very important. And fundamentally, I think that a school model where one can go anytime, any place to ask what you do not know.
Right. Rakesh, then, in 20 years' time, where will your families in your schooling system be?
Well, first of all, let me say, if I go back 20 years and what we see today, we would never have dreamt of. And to me, technology, innovation, and research is moving at such a fast pace that every 3 months, 6 months, there is something new which you have to tackle. And people like us, sometimes fail to really understand and appreciate what has moved. I mean, for example, even in rural India today, people are empowered with a very small device, which is a mobile phone. I mean, they can get information. Today, in 10 minutes, whatever happens in one part of the world, the entire world comes to know. And that's the power of technology, and that's the power of innovation. And I believe the next 20 years is going to be much beyond what we are visualizing even today. Where would it be? I'm not a technologist, so it's difficult for me to say I only use technology. But having said that, if everybody who is responsible within the society to do whatever they are doing, and to do it in a manner where it depicts quality, whether it's education, healthcare, or whatever we talk of, there are ample opportunities. I mean, you asked me a question, I can also tell you, Bharati Foundation today has become a platform where we are attracting donors like Google, Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, DLF, who are coming and giving money because they see every penny is being utilized in a very transparent manner to go and deliver and touch the lives of those children who probably would have never have either gone to school or have never been educated. And tomorrow, their lives are going to be much different, and they will be raising their families in a much different way than what their parents have.
Gabby?
One more comment on our individual behaviors. I also see, and I really hope that 20 years from now, and that probably, hopefully now, every single person understands that all of us have a responsibility. you know, we always look to government and we look to the non-profits, and you know, it's interesting to see that out of the 100 largest economies in the world, more than half of them are companies. They're not states, they're companies. But it's not just the company that comes up with social programs or environmental programs. I think every single one here that has a good education has a responsibility to engage. In this world where it's so important that people become entrepreneurs, that they collaborate, that they're creative, there's a lot everybody can share. And I think there are so many platforms, whether it's face-to-face in your own community where you live, and you look after some kids and you show them, coach them, mentor them, or whether you use some of the online platforms. If we could get the world, and I'm very hopeful with some of the young people coming and having a big interest in creating a better world, that you can make a tremendous change if everybody that has a good education steps up to it.
Right, let's open it up to the audience at that point. Questions from the floor. There are microphones everywhere. There's a hand right in the middle there, I can see. People will find you, and just go to where you can see people wanting to ask questions. Number 5, you have somebody there? Number 4, yes, please, if you could give it, and if you could try to reach the person in the middle there. Yes, number 4.
Good morning. My name is Julio Munoz. I come from Guatemala, Central America, and I work for an academic regional organism. And I am very glad to be in this very special convention. My point is that technology and tools will never substitute the professor or a teacher. The crucial or important thing is content, curricula. The mind doing the content is the one we have to support and train. I would say that internet and any TICs or any other technology will never substitute the teacher. They will help. These tools will provide resources to do a better education process. But the contents and curricula are more important, because those are the curricula is the one in charge of designing the values, the social and economical needs that each society, each country, each region, or the world needs.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's just take if you pass the microphone to the person there with the cream top. Thank you very much.
Basarat Kazim from Pakistan. I think I want to reiterate what Gabby said about technology, and I feel that in the developing world, it is time for all of us to put pressure on ourselves, our governments, everybody around us, scientists, to produce some form of power generation, be it solar, be it any other, so that our children can use the devices to partake in this brilliant world that technology has opened up for them. Because technology is now encouraging children to become independent learners, to become critical thinkers, and it's a huge market. So I feel that if all the technology people, Google, Hewlett-Packard, etc., come forward and support small enterprises in the developing world, they encourage people to come forward with solutions, and I think that the way forward is most certainly through technology.
Thank you very much. If you could keep your points short. Number 6, let's take you, please.
Congratulations, thank you very much. This is Marta Llanos from Peru. If I take the concept of education as anything that happens in any interactions that we have among ourselves, and if I take the learning situation, that's something that can happen on this interaction, and at the same time, education not only something that happens in 4 walls or something called school, what will be the most fundamental values as human beings that this new paradigm of education and learning will have to bear in mind for the future generations.
Very good, thank you very much. So we have content, which has always been the call for anything to do with the internet from the very moment it was born. We have a really fascinating question about sustainable power, because we can't have technology without power. And I thought that was a very brilliant point. And finally, we have what are the fundamental values that are going to underpin what it is that people are going to be extracting from these great resources. So, Rakesh, let me just ask you, after all, you are most challenged because you don't have electricity in some of the villages in which you're working. What efforts are really being made to produce not just the supply of electricity, but the supply of sustainable electricity to these remote communities who are going to depend upon it to reach technology?
I think the one very quick answer is renewable energy. But the matter of fact is every time we talk of technology and new innovative products, price becomes a big barrier. And I believe when we talk of solar energy, the solar panels are still very costly. And for me to invest in solar panels, I would rather extend that money to bring more students into my school.
Yeah.
And wait for the power to come, because ultimately I just cannot keep on spending the money. I'm not the government. Having said that, when I look at my K-12 schools, of course, we have backup electricity there, so their children get power as and when it is required. But having said that, I think the most important question, which was the last one, to me, education without values has no meaning. To me, any technology, any innovation which cannot go and benefit the society has no meaning. So therefore, I think there are two real issues. One is people who are at the ground level delivering education or delivering learning abilities for children wherever they are. We must ensure that value system, ethical values, respect, transparency must be provided. And the companies who are innovating products and our technology companies like HP must ensure that for the children who are marginalized, they should come out with products which we can at least buy and take it for them for easy learning. For example, India has come out with a tablet 2 Akash, which is $30. To my mind, it's something which is a very good product and can be given to every child. And the government is putting money in subsidizing that. So I think that is something which I believe is a good thing to do. Also, what we do is we are changing habits. While electricity, power is one big challenge, but to me, our children don't bathe for a number of days. Today, my children are going back into their families and saying that you don't bathe every day, you don't brush your teeth twice a day. Your clothes are dirty, the house is dirty. So they are putting a back pressure in the ecosystem, working with communities on ecological environmental issues. And that's what I said, they have become change agents. So to me, that's more satisfying and gratifying.
Great.
Issue.
Binky, let's return to this question then of content and of fundamental values. What are the values? And that, I really liked what Rakesh said. What are the values going to be that underpin what is surely almost an anarchic opportunity of materials coming in from all over the world? You mentioned Harvard, but America has very different values from China, for example. So what are the fundamental values that are going to underpin what these children are learning and what these students are picking up?
I think technology is quite a good tool to give more space for education. Today, we use the web to promote collaboration between the universities. And you mentioned that you can not only rely on technology, but you need to pay attention to the content and the quality of the teachers, the resources from the existing universities. That's the situation today. So there's existing courses. Now we share these existing courses. And then the teachers themselves will create new content and put it online. So basically the quality is guaranteed, and then can benefit to more people, more students. For example, Harvard, Yale, it's the same principle. So it's the mainstream practice in China. And then, because of the technology progress, a lot of enterprises are participating in this content providing. Some web companies, they hire very top teachers, and then these courses is also opened to the public for free. But I think that again, the technology and content, you need to get them both.
I want to put this point then to both our other two speakers, but Roberto first. If the same materials, the same opportunities, the same choices are being available essentially across the world, what happens? Do you reach a kind of globalized community in which the fundamental values are shared across the world? Is it a breakdown of borders? Is it a breakdown of national systems? Or do all those things remain integral to the education despite the fact that there's so much choice and availability?
John, I resist a one cultural world, a one language world. I think the wealth of the world is its richness in diversity, okay? So I don't see that technology is rolling over the world and making a flat world. I believe in a round world, okay? This is what we're celebrating here, diversity here. Part of our values is imparting our children the value of diversity, valuing difference, making children understand that the other person is no other than the other half of myself. I only reach completeness if I reach out the other person. This is a personal value. Let me say something about content now. We live in the world of OERs, Open Education Resources. I work with the Latin American, Guatemala, Mexico on Clarice. You heard about Clarice? It's a system of open education resource for all higher education in Latin America. But that's supply side again, supply side, supplying. It's not through supply side you're going to resolve the problem. Let me move slightly away from this technology bias we've been induced into this conversation. Let me say that education is basically a human-to-human interaction, human-to-human interaction. Basically, that's the fundamental core of education. And a good educator, a good parent, educate your children, a good educator is a person who is able to make your children's or your students' eye shine. You have to spark that shine. You have to do that inner journey with your children. They can spark. That's education. It's not about, it's human technology. That's the disrupt technology, is human to human. Okay? If this is done, then we may have a difference in education. We make our children happier. They feel well-being, they be happier. This is what we have to do, not just imparting a lot more technology on them. This is an important thing to do, okay?
Gabby.
It's back to the earlier point that I made, how we're trying really to make technology help in doing much more personal learning. And personal also means very local, and it means also that it will be different no matter where you go around the world. I think actually, the collaboration helps because you learn different things from different people around the world. If we all think and act the same, then you can collaborate just with a couple of people and you get the same result. And the beauty of it is that now we're opening ways to speak to each other, to work with each other. Kids work peer-to-peer. I mean, there are so many more opportunities. But at the end of the day, it has to be integrated into the localities, into the needs. It's got to be adapted with the people on the ground, with the teachers, whose role will change, but who are very, very, very important, with the nonprofits, with the governments, with everybody that's involved. But I think the beauty of it is the difference between everybody.
Right, let's return to the floor again, and there's a lot of, I've got number one here. Let's take number one, and then we'll take number two, and then number 4. 1, 2, and 4.
Yeah, I am Subraya, Infosys Limited, India. Leveraging the technology, definitely there are a lot of benefits. But at the same time, the technology also sometimes is an obstacle. If you see today, hundreds of websites are available, content available, and learner really confused. He doesn't know what to do. At the global level, do you see any standard body is required to control and monitor and guide the learner? It's something like, taking a learner, the flight, and then dropping him to an ocean, and he doesn't know which side he has to swim. There's no direction at all.
Thank you very much. A very interesting question. To two, please.
Hello. Good morning, y'all. This is a fascinating discussion. I'm going to take us to rural Rwanda, where I work. And I'm a young educator. I just chose this as my field. My question to y'all is, what are the future educators going to look like? What are the future educators going to look like? You're asking us to learn technology. You're asking us to implement technology. You're asking us to implement innovative models of finance. And as Mr. Bharti-Mittal said, is education going to be the vehicle that's going to expand marketplaces? Is Education Institute going to go into all these rural places and implement technology, implement banking, implement all these things? And if that is the case, what are we expecting out of our future educators? What is it going to look like?
Excellent question. And finally, number 4.
Well, gentlemen, there is a very exciting deliberation is going on. I'm Yusuf Abdullah from Bangladesh. Let me tell you a situation in Bangladesh, what's really happening, and we are facing the challenges for higher education. We're having 180 million people, where we have enormous amount of high school graduates who doesn't have access to the universities. We do not have ample of universities and colleges in the higher education level. So there is, we do not have ample of resources as well. The teachers, the professors, because the compensation package for higher education is not really very lucrative. So the interest group has declined to go for the higher educations. So taking this scenario into account, I think that it is the time to apply this e-learning and the technology to disseminate this technology for higher educations, where we do not have this amount of resources to go for set of universities, colleges, and to pay our professors as well. So I think this is a challenge that we are facing right now. And I think it's the audience who will, we can have discussions on this. Thank you.
Well, 3 really very interesting questions, because one is in the middle of an ocean and wants a map to know which side of the ocean he's to swim to. How do you find yourself your way through this extraordinary world of opportunity? What are the future educators going to look like? Are they going to be just like today's teachers, or in some way are they going to be different? And then what happens? We haven't got any teachers anyway in Bangladesh. We haven't got enough. So give us the e-learning, but what are they going to do about future educators? Who wants to pick up? Roberto.
Say something about this. I don't know if you saw a movie a couple of years ago called I, Robot. There was a very interesting dialogue between robots. A robot asked the other, would you think one day we'll be humans? Maybe. How? One day we'll have secrets, one day we'll have dreams. This is what we have to have secrets and dreams. Future educators have dreams and secrets, have taught our children, have to tell their students how to develop dreams and secrets. And freedom, choice. Okay, that's a fundamental thing. Now, values, let me come back to this values thing, because mirror neurons, as you know, the brain research showed that mirror neurons are very important. Children will do what they see you do, not the way you tell them to do. So educators have to be good role models. As parents are good role models, because your children, your students will do what they see you do, not what you tell them to do, fundamentally, okay? So 2 fundamental things I'd like to say.
Biggie.
I think the technology only gives a support to the teachers, because with more resources of content, and the teachers can have more content, more choices. And then I think teachers need to improve themselves, because on the demand side, there is a change. If on the supply side, if you don't change, you cannot adapt to the changes. And then I think the teachers need to pay attention only to the teaching. We talked about financing, but it's the institutions, the organizations, the role, and the teachers should focus on the teaching. You may need new technology and know a more diversified world to use these tools. But I think you cannot say that technology is everything. No, I don't think so.
I think, to my mind, we are really not investing into bringing about quality teachers. And the problem which I see in India is they are not well paid. I think that is one of the issues. Any child who's going through the PhD program would rather go and work in the industry because you get a higher salary rather than being a teacher. If I go back a couple of decades, teaching was a noble profession. Today it is no more. It's become a commercial enterprise. And I think that is something which is really moving the needle on the wrong side. I also keep hearing wherever schools are using smart classes, and I run one of the schools in Ludhiana, the teachers have stopped thinking. They feel that the smart class content is good enough for the child to learn. And to me, that is not the right way of going forward. The teacher must prepare for the lesson, and every time you prepare, it's a different way you deliver the next morning. So having said that, I think clearly there cannot be any substitute for teachers. There cannot be any substitute for physical locations for education. But we really need to invest as society, as governments, and I would believe that a public-private partnership are the models in education which need to be brought forward. Because the government resources backed with the private, if I may say, management, is the right combination to take this forward.
Gabby.
I was just going to say something to the marketplace. I really think it's a very good point. There is tons of information everywhere, and it's really difficult to find. And this is one of the areas where we think, as technology companies, we need to come together, and we can help create these marketplaces that make it easier. That's one of our key priorities going forward. But I would just agree with what has been said before. It's a common effort. We really have to come together and do this, and we've said it for too long, and I think we now see in certain places really good experiences and really good results, and we need to drive those up, and there's definitely opportunity.
Well, there's still a forest of hands and questions out there in the audience, but unfortunately our time is up. We could have done with at least another hour discussing this. I think it's been an extremely exciting and innovating session here. And I'd like, on your behalf, to thank the panel very warmly, but I'd also like to thank the translators who made it absolutely possible for us to have a seamless and really very coherent discussion about it. And what have we learned? What we've learned above all, I think, is exactly as Gabby said, we have to pull together. We really have a responsibility to pull together on education above all else. And we need to invest, whatever we invest, in the technology, and that's being invested in anyway by the system. We need to invest in the human being. We need to invest in the teacher. Whatever the teacher becomes, whatever that future educator looks like, we need to have invested in their growth and development. And I think that is going to be one of the key messages out of this conference. So I'd like to thank you all very warmly, but above all, our panel too. Thank you very much indeed.